Start us off, Carter.
And welcome back to the Superhero Podcast, where we talk all things superheroes. Deku here. Please, I have a cold. I can't laugh.
Sorry. Fucking starting off with Deku here.
I don't know why you're laughing. Other character from that show that Carter's never watched. We do this every week, where we talk about all the incredible mishaps and adventures of superheroes. And today, we're here to talk about the greatest superhero to ever live, Underdog, the K9 crime fighter. Ow, my throat.
I
No.
was expecting like a Batman, but I wasn't expecting Deku to talk about Underdog, which kind of fits the motif, if I'm being honest.
Right, he would. Based on what I've seen, the 2 seconds of the show and the trailer for the new movie, I gather you'd be a big Underdog guy.
Yeah.
That came from about 2 hours before this, when my hand was still intact. Burnt my hand on making a steak today, ladies and gentlemen. I
Also a
was
good
skimming
steak.
through. Yeah, it was all right. I accidentally. I should have lowered the pan heat. The outside got hot too fast, so I had to finish it in the oven to balance it out. But it came out all right. Spice mix was good. But anyway, so I was doing Facebook Reels, and one of those AI, you've seen them. They're like AI explains the plot of a movie, so it's like this very generic voice that's like, and then the guy saw a robot and ran. But it was for fucking Underdog, the live action, like that
the
era
live
of
action.
like Garfield and yeah, that era of like Garfield and stuff where they're just throwing shit at the wall. Like yeah, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Smurfs, Underdog. Yeah, let's just do all of them. Fuck it. At one point, there was going to be a Hong Kong Phooey movie, but that got canned. Yeah, no, there's test footage of that and everything. Eddie Murphy was going to be in it.
That would have been fantastic.
What are we doing again? I really got into the bit there.
It's football.
Oh, right. Carter and Kevin explain football. Carter here.
I'm not Carter.
Good.
I usually do something with the bit, but I it was too funny. Oh, I should have said I'm an underdog. Dang it, missed opportunity.
Yeah, Jason Lee, I believe. Man, they were really trying to make him a thing. You know, his name was Earl. Some other stuff happened, I assumed. Anyway, we are here to cover week 6, doing it on a crisp Thursday night. Autumn has truly set in. We currently have the full moon, the brightest full moon of the season for the harvest. I watched a squirrel for about 40 minutes while making lunch today, clearly trying to remember where it hid all of its stash for the winter, and it's just fucking guessing, obviously. The leaves are finally changing, and we're finally getting to the point in the season where we have to start making some tough decisions. Do we continue to watch teams? Do we give up on teams? Case in point, currently right now, the Thursday night game is Saints-Broncos, and we just decided, no,
Yeah,
we don't have to.
pretty much.
Yes, so do you want to dive in for this week?
I agree. I could start us off. I was slightly wrong about Sunday Night Football. I'm saying I
We
was.
might disagree on this one.
All right. Well, hold on. So Sunday Night Football was the Bengals versus the Giants, and I said that game should be relegated to 1 p.m. And I still stand by my statement on that. However, it was a very good defensive game. I will say that, but I still do not believe it was worthy of Sunday Night Football.
Right. That game is emblematic of why we need to start flex scheduling almost right away. Because again, we had a couple fun matchups that could have made for a good night game. Cardinals Packers, which wasn't much of a competition, but two big name quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Texans Patriots, you could have forced Drake May to play in prime time for his first game.
Yeah.
Ravens Commanders, which we'll get to. Lions Cowboys, the rematch of that very exciting game from last year.
So oh man.
And we'll get to what happened in that game because a lot happened in that game.
Yeah.
Yes, but for me, where basically whether or not I beat Kevin in fantasy, we played each other in fantasy this week,
Yes, we
came down to Wan'Dale Robinson, who the Giants kind of just treat like a running back who catches swing passes. He gets like 10 catches a game just because they're like, well, we don't believe in our running backs, so we're going to basically throw the ball as if it's a pitch. And Zach Moss, who had 0.5 points, I believe at some point in a raspy ass voice, I screamed, and of course these two goddamn teams are recreating the Battle of the fucking Bulge!
Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, you guys, like, that was just Sunday night. There was still my Monday night ringer.
Yes.
Dashi Boy himself.
Yes. I have that in the lowlights only because I have a funny bit for that.
Okay.
Like, it's both a highlight in the sense that, like, okay, Josh Allen is good again. It was just 2 weird weeks. He probably had a concussion in one of those games. But, yeah. I have it in the low light because I thought of a funny bit that connects both of our teams. But, yeah, that game was, for me, yes, that game was a defensive battle. Again, it's kind of bewildering that the Giants actually aren't that bad right now. They really aren't.
No.
Like, they finally invested in a good offensive line and a good defensive line and have just enough offensive weapons. The problem is you're stuck with Daniel Jones. And you can tell they're
happy.
The amount of carries this man is getting, yeah. They're so thrilled to the sense that he's leading the team in carries, and they're clearly trying to injure him. So they don't have to deal... You know, a guy who's torn his ACL, had a severe neck injury, and like 2 other things I can't remember right now. Yeah, let's have him carry the ball 11 times. More than basically any other running quarterback in the league right now. Also, I don't know if we classify him as a running back or a running quarterback.
I don't think so. I don't think he's... I don't want to say agile enough, but it's like he's in this like weird... Like, he's not a gunslinger. He's not... Oh God,
he's not in anything.
Why did I forget like every single quarterback's name for a second there? That was sad. He's not a gunslinger like Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or even CJ Stroud. But he's not like your running cornerback like Lamar, or even honestly Josh Allen could be considered. He has the ability to run.
He hasn't this year, but there's a number of reasons for that.
Yeah. He just doesn't this year. But he has the ability. But it's like he's in this like weird gray area where I feel like a lot of like the rookies or like the weird backup situations are, where it's just like, what are you doing? Like, what role are you trying to fill? Honestly, a key example in my opinion, Brock Purdy. He scrambles a little bit, but he doesn't like run. But he's like the scrambling he does teases it, and I refuse to accept him as a gunslinger because that team has too much depth.
But at least like the problem with Daniel Jones is he can't do like, at least Brock Purdy. Like, weirdly, I've turned around on Brock Purdy. I actually think he's been really good this year because the weapons have been inconsistent. But at least with, like, Brock Purdy, you see him, like, pushing. You see him trying. And more often than not, when he tries, it usually comes out okay. Like, he throws the ball downfield, it usually works out. He tries to run with it, it usually works out. Like, Daniel Jones has straight up cost this team 2 games because he's incapable of throwing a deep ball. He is incapable of consistently running an offense. Like, it's like there are just too many periods where it's just absolutely non-functioning that you don't have with Brock Purdy. And I guess you could argue that's the weapons. But again, the injuries all across the 49ers board has made it so it's like, you know, it's not an A-tier offense now. It's a B-tier offense. And like one that he's still running pretty efficiently. But I guess that's just, you know, like bias of like, well, Brock Purdy has won and Daniel Jones has not won. So if anything, this game is much more embarrassing for the Bengals, in my opinion, because it's like, okay, we're all conceding that the Giants' defense is much better, but it's not that much better. How do you only get 17 points?
Yeah, I mean, the Giants' defense kind of showed up to play.
Right, and like, I guess they beat you pretty badly in time of possession. Like, they had it 34 to your 25. But at the same time, and I'm just like going over the drives again. Like, you know, they score on the first drive, then it's punt, 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 fumble, field goal, punt, touchdown, end of game. Like, how do you? It's really hard to an
That
entire like after that first touchdown, you just punt for the entire first half.
yeah, that was a lot of just like oof, like
Did you use up all your offense points last week?
I guess so.
Um, Although back on the NFC East note, we do have congratulations to the entire NFC East for getting over the lowest bar in the NFL, a
Yep.
bar of honor, if you will. Can you beat the Cleveland Browns?
And the answer is yes. I
Not well, but you can.
I only put this in there purely because it is like the Eagles play them, but also it's just like Deshaun just kept getting bullied by like especially the Eagles defense this last week. Deshaun just got
Yes.
bullied.
A defense that has looked absolutely positively discombobulated
Yeah.
still was able to sober up and lock in enough to bully this punk. Like 7 of the 16 points the Cleveland Browns got were a byproduct of a blocked field goal return for a touchdown. A shocking turn of events for the field goal wins games committee.
Yes, it was very shocking, and I think I'll talk about it more when we talk about our teams later. But
Yeah,
no, I think it's just funny that it's week 6 and they lost to an entire division.
right. I we're putting this in highlights because the Cleveland Browns kind of deserve this.
Yeah, no,
Not the individual players. Again, I have no beef against Deontay Foreman or
correct.
Jerome Ford
Correct.
or Amari Cooper, who we'll get back to, or Jerry Juder, Pierre Strong, David Njoku,
Yeah,
Elijah Moore, who's inexplicably still in the league, or the various incredible players they have on the defensive end. But this is as karmatic as you possibly can get. That even a team as fucked up and weird as the Philadelphia Eagles right now beats you. Even a team with a rookie quarterback like Jalen Daniels and the Commanders beat you. Even Daniel Jones beats you in a year they're desperately trying to lose. And even Dallas,
falling apart every other week. Dallas.
yeah, the anemic Dallas team that clearly has, clearly inherited its owner's senior moments.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I endorse that joke on the back end, but
it's like blowout. Like Dallas wins by a blowout, they lose by a blowout. They lose by a close game, they win by a close game. They win by a close game, they lose by a blowout, and it's just like all over the place. And they have the 49ers this after their bye.
oh Christ, we'll talk about Dallas in the lowlights, but here's what I would say. I had an epiphany that I genuinely think, the Browns being this bad, and specifically Deshaun Watson being this bad, might have saved the NFL. Like, straight up, might have just saved the entire league.
Okay.
Because can you imagine if Deshaun Watson was good enough at least to get them to the playoffs? Or good enough to get them to, could you imagine if they were in, a conference title game or the Super Bowl, which was clearly the goal of this?
Oh, yeah.
The idea was they were like, Baker Mayfield isn't good enough. We need someone a little stronger. And I just keep thinking, how fucking catastrophic would that have been for the vibes of the NFL in terms of all of these commentators, all of these pundits having to put on a brave face and talk about the Cleveland Browns and they're, doing the puff pieces you do for the Super Bowl and all the inspirational story stuff. The Super Bowl media day, it would have been a nightmare. It genuinely would have. I really think it would have crippled the sport. And we are so lucky we ended up in the timeline where he just can't hack it anymore. Where they go 25 straight drives without completing a third down conversion.
And they still made the worst deal of all time for trading with the Texans for him.
Right. And somehow reversed the laws of nature and allowed the Houston Texans to become a good football team.
Yes.
Again, you're disrupting the to quote that screamy crow from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, you fools upset the delicate balance of nature.
Yes.
One of my notes for this week is because I like to do at least one that isn't quarterback centric.
Yes.
The Bucky Irving Sean Tucker Bowl, aka. So we're just making whole human beings up now, huh?
This seems like if you drafted, if you went and looked up Florida man name generator. I would believe
Yes,
both of
this
these.
is a name generator. This is like in Madden when you like do a draft, like when you get through the first year of franchise mode and you get like the generic draft NPCs. Uh, we talked about the NFC South last week and how at least now it has reached the tier of like
Hmm.
fun, like kind of like fun bad,
Yeah,
like where it's like the games are dumb and stupid and chaos, but at least we're having a good time.
agreed.
This game was drunk. So
It was
it starts
insane.
out. So the Buccaneers come out and just absolutely punch them in the mouth. Like a touchdown pass from Baker Mayfield, a huge fumble return, a field goal. They're up 17, and it looks like they're just going to run over them. They are literally running over them. Sean Tucker, who I've literally never heard of, we're
Yeah.
reaching the point where even I, famous guy who just says names and goes, football player. Mm-hmm. Remember that guy? Remember Willis McGahee? Even I'm like, who the fuck is this? He averaged 9 yards a carry on 14 carries. Bucky Irving, the backup, because Rashad White was out this week, and I'm like, how bad is Rashad White, or how bad is the Saints defense? Baker Mayfield was on one because then the Saints started to rally people. Oh, did they start to rally? I believe it might have been. I'm pulling up the actual drive chart right now because I want to remember how many consecutive drives ended in interceptions. Because
A lot.
like he threw, I think he might have thrown 3 back to back to back. All right. Interception, interception, touchdown, interception. Okay, so there was a touchdown in between to right the ship, and like I don't even think after getting punched in the mouth at the beginning, at least like there's stuff I liked about the Saints today. Like no, they couldn't really run the ball, but like Spencer Rattler at least looked confident.
He looked.
Like
He didn't look like he was having the worst time of his life.
he got hit a lot, which is bad. But are you familiar with Spencer Rattler's whole deal?
No.
Okay, so like he was like one of the it guys coming out of high school, 5-star recruit, big, like one of those guys where it's like when the minute he signs with a team, they're like, oh, well, he's a likely number 1 pick guy. He's going to be an early round, like a first round draft pick already. We just have to see it at the college level to affirm it. He kind of became one of the first guys to really go all in on the NIL stuff, like you're allowed to do ads and get money and stuff. And it was a combination of he really, really sucked one year. Like right away, he kind of started to suck. He ends up getting benched for Caleb Williams. They're still at Oklahoma at this point. And Lincoln Riley and Caleb just go, cool, we're going to bounce to USC, actually. See you. And so Oklahoma hates him because it's like, God damn it, you just scared the good quarterback away. And also, there was a Netflix documentary about high school players. And Spencer Rattler just... And he even owns up to it now. He was just a fucking dick during that. Like, he was such a douchebag.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's literally... There's all this... I'm shocked he let them put this... I guess he didn't have a choice. He signed whatever, this waiver. But, like, yeah, he's just screaming at his teammates. He's like, you're fucking soft. You're soft. You're making me look bad. And it's just like, ugh. Again, everyone soured on him so quickly, and he fell to the 5th round. And I'm like... At least in terms of raw physical, and it seems like the whole experience humbled him. It seems like he's learned a lot of lessons. And what I will say is, like, he looked like a guy who had first round physical traits, at least, where you're like, okay, he's not getting run off the field. Like, so often with later round quarterbacks, you're like, oh, yeah, this is why you were a late round quarterback. Your arm's not strong enough, you're not fast enough, you're not big and strong enough. Yeah. But he at least looks competent on all those tiers, where I'm like, if I'm the Saints...
We can work with you, but not good
enough
to be like, we're going to fight for you.
Right. If I'm the Saints, at this point I am kind of contemplating, like, I'd rather die standing up with at least seeing if Spencer Rattler can, like, do anything. And, like, again, his numbers weren't good, but at least he was pushing it downfield. At least he was trying to make stuff happen. Whereas Derek Carr is the classic, like, I would rather throw a 5-yard pass on 3rd and 15 as opposed to throw an interception or get hit. But I digress. The point is, every now and then the stars align. And a team who's famous for not being able to run the ball in the Buccaneers just goes rumbling, bumbling, stumbling for almost 300 rushing yards. 8 yards a carry. 8. And it's not like they weren't throwing the ball. They also got 300 in the air. Yeah. A offensive extravaganza, if you will.
It was the inverse of the Bengals-Giants. where
Yes.
the defenses were the
Where,
ones more falling apart.
yes. Where it was like, all right, all you offensive analytic nerds, you want this cool shit? We'll give you this cool shit. Um, Speaking of which, the Detroit Lions play the beautiful game. You know,
Yes.
you know what it is about the Lions? You know why I realize why they click so well with kind of everyone?
It's is it because they're like this weird amalgamation of like ragtag and people that deserve it, and it's like if they win, it's a deserved first um, Super Bowl, as opposed to like some other
Yes.
teams where it's like, we need you to stop, please.
Well, that's definitely a part of it. Just like that, isn't it cool that there is a football team in Detroit that's actually good at the sport now, and not just Barry Sanders dragging mediocre ass teams, or Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson dragging mediocre ass teams.
Yeah.
But it's because they are the perfect fusion between like the rah rah, I love football, bite kneecaps, we're gonna ground and pound, baby. But also like all that stuff we like now of like slinging the ball downfield, four wide in the shotgun, drop back, just throw it 30 times. They kind of are just like the perfect harmony of past and present, where it's like if they didn't throw a single pass this game, they would have absolutely murdered the Cowboys.
Yeah.
184 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. And truly, it was like, and it wasn't that thing where like great running backs will do the like 1 yard, 2 yard, -1 yard, 3 yard, 3 yard, 50 yard, 3 yard, 3 yard. No, it was just 5 yards every time they touched the ball.
Yeah.
Truly.
And then, all right, here's their touchdown distances: 16-yard run, 52-yard pass, which was a gorgeous play.
Oh,
1 yard run,
I wish I
37-yard
had more
pass.
faith in Jamison Williams
Yeah.
this year because he is delightful to watch.
And a 4-yard pass, and then just 30s to 40s field goals throughout that.
Yes. And it really is utterly impressive to just see the variety. Because again, it's like they can do the ground and pound, but then they scheme up a flea flicker to their fucking tight end.
Second year.
And you can, yes. And you can tell they're just making a meal out of this. Because if you all remember last year, that was the game where they did a trick play so devious and so perfect, the refs got confused and threw a flag.
Yes.
They they had two linemen go over and only one of them declared, and the Cowboys were so confused they went for the wrong guy. But then the refs screwed up and kind of downplayed, like, they didn't tell us who, and then they lost that game because they kind of got tilted. This game was tilted but good. 3 different times they tried to get an offensive lineman a touchdown. I believe they ended up pulling it off. But there was a hook and ladder play. Please go look this up. To Penny Sewell, their star offensive lineman. And despite it being a lot of fun, this actually did end up being a little bit of a bummer game for the Lions because their star defensive player, Aiden Hutchinson, did break his leg. Please don't go look at it. It truly is one of the more horrific things I've ever seen on a football field.
It's a grody one.
But the reason why I believe in the Lions more than ever is that would have been a perfectly good reason because they were already winning. They were beaten. They were up 20. I believe they were up like 27 or like 32 to like 9 at that point. It would have been a perfectly valid excuse to just pull the plug and be like, all right, they're beaten. We can go home. And they took the opposite route. Yeah. The second half.
It was the revenge tour that everyone wanted.
Yes, they clearly wanted their pound of flesh, and that's why you run multiple plays to linemen. Like again, I can concede the argument of like, why the fuck are you having Penny Sewell run the ball right after your other star player got hurt? Like if he tears his ACL on this, and I'm like, counterpoint, fuck him. Like show the league what you're about. And now also you show like all these trick plays. The fact that you have multiple placed offensive linemen now. The opposing defense has to be like, all right, I guess we have to practice being ready for that. It got to the point where their last touchdown of the game, they end up getting an interception. They're close to the goal line. It literally felt like okay, who are we forgetting here? Oh, Amon-Ra, you didn't really get to do anything. Here, we'll get you a touchdown pass real quick. Yeah. It was already 40-9. They bring the starters out one more time just to make sure Amon-Ra also gets a touchdown so everyone could eat.
That was really it. Actually, now that I look at it, how many? Yeah, the only outside of their kicker, who great game for the kicker too. Um, the only person that scored twice on this borderline historic game is David Montgomery.
Right. Again, this is what everyone eats actually looks like. When you incur enough draft capital and like go for the guys you want, that you have multiple all pros at multiple positions. Yeah. Tim Patrick almost scored. I forgot he was in the league. I assumed anyone who goes to the Broncos just gets sucked into some kind of never leave hole. I meant to say nether realm, and that somehow became never leave hole, which sounds like some weird. That sounds like something the Silence of the Lambs killer would have.
Hannibal Lecter.
I sent them to the never leave hole. Jesus fucking Christ. Beautiful game. I do hope they are able to, they're already attached to, Hassan Reddick has gotten permission to ask for a trade, and everyone's like, just send him to the Lions. Come on. Yeah. Let's keep the good time. Yeah, do the right thing. If I'm the league, I'm just quietly calling up New York, and we're like, hey, look, man, if you want the Super Bowl back and Meadow, yeah.
We'll give him the money. Just don't.
Yeah. We'll give you a comp pick. We'll cover the expenses under the table. You want the Super Bowl back in the Meadowlands? We'll find a way to make it work. Just be cool. Be cool. Shall we go to our don't sleep on game results?
Yeah. I'll start with mine because I feel like mine's a lot shorter of a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, Baltimore. That's what I said it was going to be last week, and based off of the results, I feel like I was right. That should have been Sunday Night Football. That was down
and in my notes, I put, "Hey, the game of the week actually lived up to the hype. That's nice." Yes. And what's funny is, I feel like the final score made it feel closer than it was. It did feel like Washington was having trouble keeping up with, you really do realize the minute the Ravens get a lead, it really does feel insurmountable.
Yeah.
Just because they're just so dominant. Again, this was the ultimate Derrick Henry performance where it's he basically just took control for the back half of the game where you're like, God, what are you even supposed to do? He's not tired. Everyone else is tired.
Everyone else is beaten. Dude's just warming up.
Right. The Ravens played borderline perfect. The only mistake they made was Mark Andrews volleyballed a ball into the air and it got intercepted.
Yeah.
But it really is
a rough season though.
Yeah. My modest proposal is we do a dual MVP, co-MVP between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, because it really is man, this worked out perfectly, didn't it? Where it's everything you could have hoped for this duo has come to fruition. Lamar looks even better than he did last year. He's somehow even getting Rashad Bateman run. And yet I don't feel that bad about the Commanders, because again, they're ahead of schedule.
They're way ahead.
Jalen Daniels looked good.
This was not a bad, I use this terminology a lot. This wasn't Washington losing. This was the Ravens winning. Because it really came down to the wire. And it was super close, one-score game. And I think the biggest inhibiting factor is them making it so you have to declare onside kicks and making that stupid rule.
Yeah, I really don't like that rule. I've weirdly become radicalized with you on the kickoff thing. It's just not. It's just not what I want it to be, I guess.
It's one of those things. I don't hate the concept of having if it lands in the zone, you gotta run it. And it's all right, I kind of like that. But the fact that you can't do the surprise onside kick, arguably the most hype play in all of football. Just looking up a Pat McAfee highlight reel, you'll probably see a great one by him.
Yes.
It's no, you have to declare it now, and it's just God, it's not a surprise you're gonna go for it. Now, if you can reverse that and say you're gonna take an onside kick and just absolutely boot it, different story. That could be fun. If teams start doing that strategy.
Right. My governing philosophy on that front is if changing a rule would mean that an iconic play in your sport didn't happen, then you probably shouldn't do it, unless it's a safety thing. Obviously, you shouldn't be allowed to clothesline people like Dick the Night Train Lane used to do.
Yes.
That's actually a fun fact. The second CEO of Disney God, I always forget his name.
Richard
What is it?
Nixon.
What is it? No. Oh my God, I'm forgetting. He's related to Walt. That's how he got the job. But hold on. I'm vamping. You know what? It doesn't matter. The point was he was Walt's like son-in-law. And he was actually a football player for the Rams. And he's mostly the only notable play he ever had was Night Train clotheslined him, and he was literally unconscious for 2 minutes. But yeah, like that. But it's like, yeah, the Saints won a Super Bowl because they did that onside kick. They had no business winning that game. But like, yeah, in terms of the Commanders, this was like what we wanted to see in terms of like, all right, if you can't do whatever you want, can you still win? They could not, like, the Ravens just sold out to stop the run this game. And yet Jalen Daniels was able to do a lot of stuff we hadn't seen him have to do yet in the air. A lot of tough windows, like he borderline perfect pass placement on so many different plays. A lot of throwing to the middle, a lot of throwing to the left, not being able to scramble to get out of situations, and just looking like painfully efficient for a rookie. Again, it's like, I really do think no matter what happens the rest of the way for the Commanders, I really do feel like this season is a win because it's like, it's so clear what the vision is. It's just, and it's so clear what you need to work on. Namely, like, hey, don't trade all your defensive players away again.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I can't be mad at the Commanders for losing this game. They stayed in it as long as they could.
It was a solid performance by them, and I don't think, like I said, I don't think it was a loss for the Commanders because it's like, and it's also like it's not like they're going up against like kind of like a underdog, like scrappy third place team for their division. It's like, no, they are going up against a like the dominating team of the conference that on the offensive side only improved.
Right.
It's like they're going
like
it's a different, it's like it's not the easiest setup. It's like, all right, you're going up against the Super Bowl defending Kansas City Chiefs. It's just like, that's not.
I do, right.
For
like
being a rebuilt team, not the fairest conclusion.
Right. Like we've all, like I feel like everyone's kind of been waiting for like the, what's the word? Like the sort of come down game where it's like, all right, he's a rookie. This team is not that good. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they're able to stay in those games, like the last 2 weeks, like the last 3 weeks between the Bengals, Browns, and Commanders, if they stunk it up in any one of those games, people would have been more or less understanding. Maybe the Browns game less, but that defense is still good. They just quit at half when they realized it's not going to be competitive.
Yes.
But yeah, the fact that they've managed to gut it out at least makes me really happy. Again, we need cool quarterbacks and we need better teams.
Yeah.
And it's exciting that there's actually a rivalry in this like core of the East Coast that has been lacking for so long.
Yeah. Also, strength of schedule wise, Commanders have Panthers, Bears, Giants as their next 3 games.
They already did flex the Bears, Commanders. Kind of weird that wasn't already the night game, considering they're 2 pretty hyped quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to see that. My don't sleep on game is more of a result as opposed to a competitive game. The Houston Texans emphatically beat the New England Patriots 41-21.
Yeah.
Drake May's first game. On one hand, it was really happy to see this from the Texans, who I just feel like haven't had a truly dominant game yet. And this is the first time it really felt like they were playing the kind of way they wanted to play. I feel like a lot of times they really have wanted to play this sort of, and people have talked about this, they want to pivot to more of a power running game to supplement the creation ability of CJ Stroud. They don't want to have it last year where Stroud is kind of running for his life a lot and having to drag this team through a lot of muddy positions. But that hasn't worked because between Mixon being hurt, Damon Pierce just not really fitting in with like how they want to run it.
Agreed.
And the offensive line constantly being like, just not really functioning because it has so many injuries. This was the ideal form of what they want to do. 6 yards a pop on the ground. Stroud threw 3 touchdowns on only 20 throws. And especially impressive because they lost their best player. They lost Nico Collins. And yet everyone else, that's why you get Stephon Diggs. So you still have a functional offense even when you don't have Nico Collins. Mm-hmm. And on the Patriots end, Drake May was A-okay. There were a couple times where you see that, like, you see that Sam Darnold I'm seeing ghost thing. Especially early, it felt like he was very deer in the headlights. He threw two pretty rough interceptions, but made up for it later in the game. He ended up throwing 3 touchdowns, and his first, where he whips the ball from about midfield, perfect placement, sideline catch, touchdown. Again, it's like, with the exception of Daniels, all of the rookie quarterbacks have kind of had growing pains to start off, but this was the game you wanted to see in terms of, like, does this guy have a spark? Does he at least, like, do the physical traits translate to, like, playing in the NFL? Or, like, when he gets out there, do you immediately go, oh, this kid can't hack it? And, like, despite this, like, jitteriness at times, despite running into a couple sacks, at the bare minimum, you're like, this kid's play can translate. They just have to build a team around him and, like, make sure he doesn't, just doesn't get shell-shocked too early.
Yeah, and I feel like this. I brought this up last week, and this was kind of my big question. What, like, do you think it was the right choice putting in a rookie's first start against a dominant team?
Almost certainly not.
Yeah.
And yet they did. And by that standard, I think he did a really good job. I forgot they played the Dolphins the week before, which probably would have been the more sensible starting position.
I think, yeah, and then they play the Jaguars the following week. I feel like it was a very weird, like, spot.
Yeah, and it's so weird the way, like, Gerard Mayo talks about it. It really did feel like the fine, if this will shut everyone up kind of move.
Mm-hmm.
I do think one thing that gets lost in transitioning from, like, not just a good coach, but a coach who was there for like 20 years is, like, just media management. There is something to Belichick kind of just being a grumpus who doesn't, like, doesn't, like, give straight answers. Whereas Gerard Mayo, you can tell, hasn't really learned how to manage the media well, so now he's just... So, like, it did feel like he was getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But for now, I feel okay about this result. And, like, I'm excited to see him going forward. Just please, don't try to win too many games. Like, look, I want to win my division as much as possible, but I also like competition. And, if you can get Travis Hunter or Ashton Jeff, I always forget, the Boise State guy. The guy who runs, like, John Wick, like, shooting all of those people off of him. Like, the way people fly off of him, it's like... Because it's like that scene from that one movie where the guy's running and it's all blue. He's just shooting the guys in front of him. Yeah. Like, like on a football field. I never remember what it's from. But it's not at a distance. It's like John Wick, where it's like hand-to-hand, but with a gun. So he's like, punch, shoot, punch, shoot. Guys are just flying off of him. Yeah. All right. Yeah, get him or Travis Hunter, and things will look up really, really fast. Anyway, should we pivot to the lowlights?
We shall.
Dallas gets laughed at on Jerry. It was his birthday. My God!
Jerry Jones' 82nd birthday. I saw, like,
he's older than Joe Biden.
And I saw memes about it, and I was just kind of like, that's funny. And then I was just like, oh, like, then I processed, like, the game, and it's like, oh man, that is hilarious. And
yes, everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Mm-hmm. They only scored field goals. They scored 3 field goals the entire game.
And someone made it, like, I was listening to some people talking about, like, what the hell is wrong with Dallas right now? And it really is, they cannot run the ball. They just can't. They have not been able to run the ball this entire season. It really is the consequence of losing Tony Pollard, who, for all his faults, and last year he was, recovering from a leg injury. Mm-hmm. Like, he was still a competent runner even when he wasn't 100%. Now you're stuck with Rico Dow, who's, like, is capable of explosive plays, but is by no means capable of being your lead back. Ezekiel Elliott, who's just literally like, I can't practice anymore.
I think he's washed.
Yeah. He's literally like, I'm on a pitch count, which is to say, I can't pitch anymore. Again, it is so funny. And so much of this is about Jerry Jones, weirdly, because it's how you run an organization. Again, Dallas is the embodiment of my, like, mantra of, like, process. It's all about you have to have a good process or the whole thing will fall apart. But, like, after the first round of the draft, it's like, hey, were you looking at any running backs? And in this interview, Jerry Jones is like, yeah, we're looking at that Allen kid. He's really good. We have him high on our board. And his son elbows him. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
and the Jets draft him before the Cowboys can get him. So now they don't have a running back. And it really is just like Dallas is in a more extreme version of last year's team where they can really only win one way, where it's Dak comes out on a heater, they score early, and then they're able to just pin their ears back and rush the passer because they have not been able to run the ball very well for a while. They have not been able to stop the run in a while. And when Dak Prescott is not one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league, the whole thing kind of topples over. They built a stars and scrubs league, but none of the stars are playing well, on top of the injuries, because now Micah Parsons is hurt.
Yeah, no, they're falling apart, and it's sad, but also I'm a fan.
Right? It's. I guess it's funny because it's Dallas, and Dallas is a little annoying, but it really is just like. I guess I feel a little bad for Jerry Jones because you can tell he wants to win so bad, but it's just like he's built an organization that doesn't know how to win anymore. And they've spent how much money on like 3 guys who just aren't good enough by themselves.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
feel bad for Jerry Jones, but that might be
like
just
Dak.
bias.
Yeah, I mean, look, you shouldn't feel. You can sympathize with billionaires, but never empathize with them. You can feel bad for them, but like you can't like them or really like you can't like feel bad too bad for them. Basically. What is this note? As the wind blows.
Oh, that was about.
What are you yapping about?
That was about the wind during the Sunday Night Football game.
Oh,
Just
yes.
going insane.
Yes. Sunday and Monday, basically anyone in the New Jersey area. And I can tell because I was running in the morning. And I was getting blinded because I live next to a farm and it was windy as shit. And there was dust everywhere.
Yeah. No, it was a windy weekend for your Northeastern games. And yeah, I just thought it really just kind of put a damper on, like, there were some, like, clearly blown away kicks and stuff that it's just like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
I feel not great about that.
Oh, yeah. Which kind of leads us into our next note. Both our stupid teams won, and all we want to do is fire the fucking coach. Do you want to start with Nick Sirianni's nonsense, or should I do Sean McDermott first?
Here's my hot take. I don't think that Nick Sirianni. I mean, I'm losing a little faith in him, but I still don't think he's done bad enough to get fired. And here's why. Because somebody came out on the Eagles Reddit and was like, "Yeah, I was the guy that Nick Sirianni was yelling at, and it was because I yelled at him to run the ball, and he told me, watch this." And then Saquon had a good run, and then he's like, "I told you so." And then after the Eagles won, he was like, "Yeah, I told you so." And it's like, all right, like, I feel like that's fun fan engagement in a typically hostile city.
Right.
So
To be fair, we also should qualify for people who don't follow baseball. The Phillies kind of blew it really badly,
they
losing.
blew super bad.
Despite being the 2nd seed and getting a bye week for the baseball playoffs, they lost to the New York Mets. The Hawk Tua Grimace Shake OMG, like basically the meme team of this season, and lost in pretty embarrassing fashion. So the city was already ready to like snap at anyone, and something about Nick Sirianni, whose whole like thing this year is like, what exactly do you do? Like, why are you here? And the big meme of him is like he was yelling at Kansas City fans, and then they lost like 7 straight games.
Yeah.
He was just the optics of it were inoptimal.
He was cursed.
Yeah. Yeah, his is more just optics of like you barely beat the Browns and you're doing like this shit was cute when the Eagles were like borderline undefeated for like a year and a half, but now when it's like, you know, the insinuation is you're on the hot seat and you're kind of playing for your job, you kind of can't be doing this stuff, man. You're a grown adult. Especially when an article comes out that Big Daddy Dom. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that on mic.
You did.
Are you sure we can't edit these episodes?
Nope, that's too much work.
All right, well, I guess I had to counter it by being problematic. Italians shouldn't idolize Christopher Columbus. I could have went a lot of directions there. I chose
so many directions there.
Yeah, we need to do this. Needs to be like SNL where you have a button to like censor people. But anyway, yeah, and that leads me to my stupid team. And like the thing is, the score was 23-20. It should not have been this close, but a combination.
Also, side note before we fully dive off the Eagles, I'm not upset about how close the game was because they got the Browns got the blocked punt. Specifically, Miles Garrett got the blocked punt, and it's like one of those like, you know what? If it was almost any other player, that probably wouldn't have happened. So it was just
Hmm.
such a dumb luck situation that I'm not that mad about it. Or a blocked
That's
field goal.
fair.
Because it's like, and people are like, oh, they only won by like 4. And it's like, it would have been more because the defense was on fire. It's this one niche play. And it's like, how often do block field goals end up in a touchdown? Very rarely.
Mhm.
And it's just like, so it's like, I'm not mad about that. And they still won.
Yes.
So I can't be too upset.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Bills really should have won by a lot more. Multiple
Agreed.
times in this game, they kind of had the Jets dead to rights. It was
They
kind of what we
had to
saw from the
win.
first couple. Exactly. Like it was what we saw in the earlier games of Josh Allen kind of just being a maestro and just conducting this offense methodically down the field. As rough as the Bills' passing like offensive line has been on passing, they've been incredibly dominant on like in the running game. Ray Davis, short king, just was pinballing off of people, and yeah, and also the pass rush looked as good as it has in a while, partially because we finally gotten a lot of people back, and yet it's the goddamn coaching again, and like not again the offensive line getting some simply stupid penalties. A part of that's discipline, but a part of that's like, well, you can't control that in the moment. But it was literally like a basically a two drive swing that turned the entire game around. You know, you're up 23 to 10, or you're up 20 to 10. You scored a touchdown on your last drive. You're going to get the ball back to start the game. Easy peasy. You have a chance to put them away. For some reason, Sean McDermott always does that thing he does when it's the last play of the half and calls a timeout to try and psych them out. They throw a Hail Mary pass, and of course it scores. This is the third time a sort of Hail Mary pass scenario between that Cardinals game a few years ago and that Vikings game on 4th and like 23, where it's like, at some point, if you don't know how to cover this, that is on the coach. Like it's the same, it's almost always the same players. Like it's a lot of the same players doing it. If you have not taught them how to avoid this happening, that's kind of on you. On top of the fact that you only rushed 2 on that play, you inexplicably have your 2 defensive ends playing the sideline. Like, what do you get from letting him perfectly place the ball where he wants to? Then you come out to start, the second half. For some reason, you just completely give up on the running game, despite being, more or less unstoppable on that side. You have 3 or 4 straight drives where you try to lead with passing, even though we've already established you do not have the wide receivers right now to run um, a pass heavy game. And Hail Mary pass, immediate next drive. You get close. Josh Allen throws like a 40-yard bomb, and for some reason, even though it's 3rd and 15, you throw a short screen pass to make the field goal easier, even though your kicker has had the yips, and he misses the fucking field goal, and the entire game kind of swings on that, and you get really lucky. They miss 2 straight field goals to sort of turn things around for you, because this game, you coaching almost exclusively lost this game. It's so funny how this team is so similar to the 2019 team, where it's like you have just enough talent on offense. Josh Allen is talented enough, and the line is sturdy enough, and your defense has just enough good players where it's like you can make enough splash plays to squeeze out tight wins. The only difference is now your kicker can't hit shit, and your coach has somehow gotten worse with game management and just like situational awareness. And I'm like, if I ever actually believed the Pagulas would fire him, I almost kind of would have let them to lose this game. Because finally, like I said, the media discourse is finally being like, Sean McDermott's not really good at this, is he?
Yeah, no, it's finally catching up to him.
Right.
And
He's finally run out of people to throw under the bus. He can't throw the special teams coach under the bus after 13 seconds. He can't throw Leslie Frazier off the bus after the Bengals game, and he can't throw Ken Dorsey over the bus when they start out really bad.
yeah, and it's like your next team is the Titans, and if you don't like,
Yeah, I'm
they're
actually a little nervous about that game. That's a classic nonsense game.
yeah they're low there. I think though that it's like if you had to like make a mid-season firing, because it's like, all right, very easily, not very easily, but beat the competitive Cardinals,
Mhm.
Demolish the Dolphins, demolish the Jaguars. Everything's checking out.
Non-competitive teams.
Yeah. Losing to the Ravens pretty badly. And it's like, all right, like, that's kind of
Well,
justified.
they got control of the game early.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where it's like, this can kind of justify it. Losing by 3 to the Texans, which is another very competitive team.
Which was another bad coaching performance.
Yeah, by like a last second field goal. And then winning by 3 against the Jets, it's like, this isn't the most impressive behavior. And I think the next 4 games are what's going to make or break McDermott. Because it is Titans, Seahawks, Dolphins, Colts. Those are
Yeah.
like Seahawks are relatively competitive, but the other 3 are non-super competitive teams at this time.
Honestly, a secret thing that I think would be a huge help is the fact that the Sabres, after a whole offseason of we have to be better, this is going to be the year we go finally make the playoffs after a 14-year playoff drought. They're starting 1-4. It's very bad, and I do think maybe as a distraction they'll draw everyone's eyes to the football team again. But at the same time, again, I'm like, they won the game. They look competent. Again, you can see the vision of this team succeeding in the playoffs because, again, it's like, yeah, Josh Allen is that good. The running game can be that good. And again, now that you have most of your stars back, you have Terrell Bernard back, you have Taylor Rapp back, you have Taron Johnson back. Like, I love Aaron Rodgers throwing Mike Williams under the bus for sliding to try and make that catch where I'm like, literally when I saw that play live, I'm like, no fucking way they're gonna tie this game up. But Taron Johnson makes an incredible play, and it's like, yeah, that's why you need your defense to be healthy, because you still have enough top tier guys that they can gut it out. But yeah, fuck, damn you, Sean McDermott. And then, learn how to be a better coach. It's been 8 years.
Yeah, after that 4 games, they got competitive Chiefs, competitive 49ers.
Rams, then it gets serious.
Competitive Lions, and that's all like during the weeks of like heavy playoff contention where you are like, it's like the last 3 weeks, if you make it through like the first 15 pretty well, you'll at least be comfortable. It's like, all right, we're in the playoffs. We'll try kind of hard, see if we get the number 1 seed. But if we're out of the contest for the number 1 seed, but we're in playoffs, we're not gonna try as hard. And two of the games in the last 3 weeks are the Patriots. So there's that.
Right.
We're on their own little world adventure. But it's like after that, like after this upcoming foursome of like relatively decent games, you're in the heat of playoff competition against, in 4 games you play honestly 3 of the biggest contenders.
Yeah, that's going to be the litmus. That's going to be the litmus test whether or not this team actually gets past the divisional round, or if it's just we're going to win the division and that'll be enough for now.
Yeah, and I think though, like, that's why you got to decide on McDermott before that, because it's like if you go into that with McDermott, and he wins one of the games, and you make it to the divisional round, maybe not through it, but to it, everyone's gonna be like, McDermott was in a good spot. But then the cycle continues, and the Bills don't really have the ability for growth.
Right. And, like, not to psychoanalyze, but, like, the fact, again, a part of throwing all these people over the bus, Brian Daboll, who had head coaching aspirations, Leslie Frazier, who was a head coach at one point, like, you conveniently fired everyone who's ever been a head coach. Wait, was Joe Brady at one point was a head coach, but again, was he a head coach for the Panthers? I don't remember if he was just the offensive coordinator or not.
I try not to learn anything about the Panthers.
No, he was only offensive coordinator for the Panthers. Yeah, no, you've fired everyone who's ever had head coaching sort of experience. So, it's also like, who are you going to get to replace me? But
Belichick.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, why not? Just fucking try it. Why not? Like, the offense basically runs itself at this point.
Yeah.
Our other low light is, when is it morally right to fire a coach overseas? I don't have a lot to say about this Jaguars-Bears game. I just, again, it's just so... It's so funny how quickly everyone turned on the Jaguars. It's like, we're tired. We're tired of Trevor Lawrence not being good enough. Like, it's
They
not worth defending him anymore,
they were
even if they have a lot
on
of drop.
such hot pushes too, and now it's just like, oh god, it's like, why are you still playing? I think
Right.
I do not think that this line, not even this lineup, but like this coaching staff will make it after into the year 2025.
I genuinely think they would have at least considered firing. They
The
would have
OC,
considered firing him if they weren't overseas back-to-back weeks again. Why do they do this? It's so dumb.
I will say though, I thought when I remembered this, but I thought the funniest thing would be is overseas game, bye week, overseas game. I think that's the
That would have been
funniest.
evil.
I think
That
that
would
would
have
have been
actually
funny.
been evil. It would have been hilarious, but yeah, no, they're not that. The NFL isn't that cruel. They're
Overseas,
morally gray. They're not evil. There's a difference.
overseas bye week, overseas Thursday night football. That would be the worst.
No,
thing.
that's sick. That's
That's
I don't think you're allowed to do that. I think they act like I think
that
the
has
players
to be
union would get
illegal.
involved.
That has to be illegal. But yeah.
All right. What 3 teams do you think they would be willing to do that to?
Um. Oh, like giving them the most dumpster schedule ever. In at least this season, I think honestly the Jaguars they would be willing to do it to. The Browns and like your just real dog shit teams, like the Rams, like your non-competitive competitive team, like teams where it's just like no one's gonna care if they're screwed. I think in the lore of like NFL being scripted and rigged and stuff, I think the Eagles are on a short list. I
Mhm.
think the Seahawks are on the short list. The entire NFC North. Um, I think I don't think the Dolphins are on the short list, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Dolphins. And
Hmm.
if the Texans didn't have the C.J. Stroud storyline going, it would be them too.
Right.
Like there's the teams that the NFL clearly doesn't care about, and then there's the teams where it almost seems like they're fighting to make things happen with them, a la Cowboys, 49ers, Chiefs. And then
Hmm.
there's their teams that it's like if you told me they were against, I can believe it. And one of that is the entire NFC North. I feel like that team, which very competitive division this year.
Yes. First division with 4 wins. Every team getting 4 wins.
Yep. And once again, this is week 6, 7, whatever. So it's super competitive. And I think though that there isn't enough hype around like the Bears are a super legacy. The Packers are a shorter legacy. And then the Lions are notoriously terrible till the last couple of years. And the Vikings are the Vikings. That's really about it. So it's like if there's this division that's been like getting like I would say scripted against, it would be that one.
Hmm. Shall we hit our notes? Notable notes. We actually have a kind of big note
Yeah.
this week.
Lots of
2 really
trades.
big trades.
Huge trades, I would say. And
Yes.
small.
So, yes, the first one is Devontae Adams gets traded from the slowly imploding Vegas Raiders to the New York Jets.
Football Packers.
Yes, basically. I mean, God, it's so fucking funny. They
That-
might as well bring NVS back. Really get the band back together.
That literally just cements me thinking how much control Aaron Rodgers has on that team.
Right. And like honestly, my biggest takeaway is just that of like, whatever. You're in too deep, no half measures, just like fully embrace the Aaron Rodgers-ness of it. Cause like, I feel like firing the coach was an impulse decision that a billionaire made because he was like, because he was he was
Aaron Rodgers told him
embarrassed.
to.
Yeah. Yeah, because Aaron Rodgers told him to, and they were embarrassed overseas around all of his rich friends. And it's like, yeah, at this point, you might as well just double down. And it's like, someone described it well as like, this does not this raises their ceiling a little bit because, again, it's very clear Aaron Rodgers at this point, on top of his many conservative opinions, does not like meeting new people. So getting his bestie friend, who he's always been good with, is an obvious improvement. And he's still got a little juice left. He's still a pretty good wide receiver, if not top 10 wide receiver. It does raise your ceiling a little bit, if only because you can get a lot of explosive plays. Again, you can move the ball in the Bills. You just weren't able to get enough splash plays. But the floor is still the same. Your offensive line is old as shit and sucks. Your defense does not have a pass rush. Basically, all the problems are still there. But at least now you can theoretically just have more explosive. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is happy, so to at least keep it stable for a little longer. I guess I'll do my 2 minutes on Amari Cooper. My thing with Amari Cooper is just like, would it have been fun to get Devontae Adams? Yes, because that's big and flashy, and you want your team to do big, flashy things, so they know they care about you. But in reality, they didn't need a big flash. They just needed an adult in them. Like, so much of so much of the problem with getting rid of Diggs is you just really don't have any adults in the room in terms of, like, guys who just show up to work, are capable of getting 9 to 12 catches a game, and just, like, the kind of, like, again, just B-level, like, B-minus, A-minus tier player who just gets an offense functioning. Like, that's really been the fundamental problem, where your receiving core just is not functioning. Like, you just don't have enough pieces to make it work. Like, everyone's playing out of position. You don't have anyone with enough seniority or enough, like, authority to, like, help organize everything. When you have 2 different drives that end in a desperate heave to Mac Hollins in the middle of the end zone, you've gone wrong. Mac Hollins, 5th string wide receiver who's kept around on teams because he's good at blocking and he's good at special teams. Like, that's just not a serious wide receiver core. This makes you serious, where it's like, now everything makes sense. Amari is your, like, versatile X receiver. You have Khalil Shakir is able to focus more on the slot where he's more comfortable. And then you have Keon and Curtis Samuel as your alternating between, like, your stretch ball guy or your gadget play guy, or in Keon's case, your jump ball guy. Again, like, people are wringing their hands about what this means for Keon Coleman. It's like, Keon Coleman, if you want a rookie wide receiver,
if you want Chewbacca,
yeah, yeah. Well, that solves everything because he just rips people in half or explodes them with a crossbow. That would actually make this whole season a lot more tolerable. But it's like, if you want a rookie wide receiver to be like an elite playoff contention wide receiver, you need to reach for one of the big guys. Mm-hmm. You need one of the blue chip guys. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. could do that. Malik Neighbors could do that. Going back a couple years, Jamar Chase could do that. Like, when you draft, much like the Chiefs, when you draft Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman, it's to be role players, at least for now. It is, you have a specific, you have to accept they're not going to be a number one guy. Mm-hmm. And the problem was, you didn't really have that luxury where Keon kind of had to be the number one guy when he couldn't. Like, again, so much of this season was, delusional faith, because deep down, again, Brandon Beane can't just be honest and say, yeah, Stephon Diggs had a meltdown and the whole thing's fucked. He can't be honest about that, so he has to put on a brave face and say, we like everyone in the roles they have. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yeah, there's a lot of blind faith of like, all right, Dalton Kincaid can kind of be Travis Kelce, and like, Curtis Samuel is still fast even though he's old, and Keon can surprise people, and now you don't have to do that anymore. Now everyone has a set role, and everything can just function correctly. Mm-hmm. You don't have to rely on Josh Allen to just save everything.
Yeah.
Simple. Sometimes it really is that simple. And it's a good deal. He doesn't cost $1 million. You only traded a 3rd-round pick. You didn't have to give up your extra 2nd-round pick. And if you keep him, that's good. If he leaves this year, you get a compensatory pick. Yeah. So kind of like a sense. Again, it's
a sensible
adults in it's adults in the room make an adult decision to add one grown-up to a wide receiving core that was just struggling a little bit.
Yep, I think it was a very nice, solid trade.
Were there any other trades that happened this week?
There was Cam Akers back to the Vikings.
No, Cam Akers.
Yeah, that was
back to the Vikings. Oh my god, I forgot he was on the Vikings. Yep. I feel bad.
That was the only other, like, in my opinion, like, semi-significant one.
I do feel bad because when he was good, he was really good. It's just, injuries and the weird vibes in LA, and
Yeah,
I hope he can make it work, honestly.
it'll. We'll see. That's all I got. We'll see.
Um, yeah, that's the best you can say for him right now. Shall we move on to next week?
I was gonna say we should hit that question of the week real quick.
Oh shit, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hit me with it.
All right. So, no reasoning why. You just
Mm.
name the team and we move on. What team should we give up on for this season? Who should be fighting for draft picks?
Well, there's an obvious one, but the non-obvious one, the less obvious one, I'm going to say is Las Vegas Raiders.
I'm gonna go with the LA Rams. And that was the
Damn,
first
you're
of the week.
really down on the Rams.
Yeah.
Counter question of the week. What team do you think we should just trust going forward? No matter what happens, no matter what highs and lows happen.
I mean,
What team are you putting on a shelf where you're going to be there? Yeah, other than CJ Stroud. He gets permanent status there unless he gets hurt or something goes crazy. What team have you watched this year where you're like, I know what you're capable of, even if you lose a couple games going forward? I trust you to be competitive in the playoffs.
I'm high on the Lions.
Yeah, that's one I was thinking about. And I'll put the other obvious one, the Ravens. Those two teams, I'm like, we'll check in with them, but I'm like, don't worry. I know you're going to be there. You're probably going to get to the conference title game unless something goes really wrong.
Yeah.
Like, even if you have a bad game where you lose by like multiple scores, I'm going to trust that it was like a freak thing.
Yeah, it's like Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, and Montgomery all they all got into a car together and the tires popped and they were late for the game.
And then underdog accidentally collided with it and flipped over. No one was seriously hurt, but
Yeah.
like they were a little too beat up to play that day.
Yeah, it's just like, ooh, we'll take an off week, and then they lose to the Bears.
Yes. So those two teams, I'm basically like, you've shown me 9 out of 10 ways you can win. So I feel pretty confident that I don't have to worry about you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. On to next week.
Yep. Next week, Kansas City versus San Francisco in a Super Bowl rematch.
The vibes in San Francisco are really weird right now, and if they lose that game, I think they're going to get way weirder.
I love a good Super Bowl rematch game.
I feel like they should be obligated to have one every year.
Yeah. I'm of the personal belief that it should be like the first game of the season. Why not? I feel like that's fun. But I also will settle for because they did it last year with Eagles, KC,
Chiefs.
Yeah, in week 10 or 11 or something like that, and that was a great game. That was a great time. But it's weird that this game isn't at a bigger spot. It is a 425.
Right. I'll hit you with the counter. I kind of like it being mid-season. Both teams have kind of gotten to settle back in, and it's like, all right, let's see what we got this time.
Oh yeah, they're hitting.
It's like in the Paper Mario games when you have to fight Bowser the second time, and it's like, man, you're still not powerful enough.
Oh yeah, no, it's one of the. It's like that's one that it's like I'm not getting on my soapbox for, but it's just like it's like you know what would be fun? This the rematch happens. The last game of the last season is the first game of this season. That'd be kind of fun. It's not worth me being like, how dare they?
Right. This is not a soapbox one.
It's a cutesy thing.
I agree. Yeah, honestly, this is actually a really good week, honestly.
Them being at 425, though, that is a little upsetting.
Yeah, that should be a primetime game. But we have Houston, Green Bay. We have Giants, Eagles.
We have Broncos, Saints.
This is a really good week. Yay!
That's a game.
Detroit, Minnesota. Yeah, this is a shockingly good week for kind of random matchups.
Yeah, but it's like that Super Bowl rematch at 425 and not the Sunday night game or Monday. There's 2 Monday night games this week. Put it in one of those. We can replace Chargers, Cardinals, but
Yeah.
That's not my job.
We gotta stop. We gotta stop with this shit, man. I'm so tired of the 2 Monday night games.
It's
not even that big a problem. It just annoys me mildly.
What they have to do is they have to make a position exclusively called scheduler, and I will be the only person running it. And
yes, the czar of scheduling.
I will be on my soapbox and I will work from home because that will be convenient for me. Uh, and I will just contemplate the schedule and make it fun. Try and make it so you're not wasting your time every single in every single time slot.
Mhm. I like it.
Give me this
As
power.
for
Joe Burrow, give me this power. I don't think he has
he'll
any
try his
ability
best,
to
man.
do that, but it's kind of
I
funny.
mean, gee, he'll try.
Hmm.
Um, yes, but only 2 buys this week after a kind of heavy bye week last week.
Yeah.
They have pads for that. Chicago coming off a pretty good streak of games where Caleb has looked much better. Granted, it's been against some not great defenses, but he has shown a level of maturity in reading plays and making calls at the line of scrimmage and just like
Mhm.
looking how you'd want him to look.
Yep.
Um,
They're 4-2. They're despite being 4-2, which is the lead of some divisions. They are tied for last place in their division. Because it's the other teams are the lossless Vikings and the down a week because they already had their bye Lions, who were 4-1. So it's like, all right, that's kind of fun. But I think this is a good time for them to just reassess and be like, all right, Caleb, this is how are we doing?
hmm,
Because they pretty much put the farm on him, and
right.
then they have
Like this is it. You're not going to get another like you at some point they're going to keep you from drafting young quarterbacks if you
yes,
blow another one.
yeah, and I feel like this is like a nice let's reassess, let's process things, let's keep things warm game
Mhm.
plan, and then coming out of it, they have Commanders first, and then it's like Cardinals, Patriots, Packers, like all right, and then you go to like a Vikings 49ers, the Lions again, like the Lions twice, the Vikings again. So it's like
Right.
you get a nice ease into the end of the season to just
Mhm.
like reassess, prep for the second half of the season because we're getting close to the halfway point,
Unbelievable.
and they can just fully ease into it, really open up, and then have a solid chance to make a push.
Mhm.
And the other team is
Um,
the Dallas Cowboys off of a harsh loss. And
yeah,
I think it's the exact opposite of what the uh, Cowboys or not Cowboys, Bears are doing, where it's just kind of like a let's collect our breaths and reset, make sure we do this. This is wake up call time for the Cowboys because
right. It's how much of the future do you want to throw away to try and
mm-hmm,
save this season, basically? How many draft picks are
yes,
you willing to spend? How much money can you throw around it? Whatever free agents are available.
mm-hmm,
Uh, it's desperation time.
yeah, and it's like and Jerry Jones notorious for not playing with those stuff. But it's like they had the week 1 win of 33-17, followed by 2 losses, a blowout and a close one. And then it's like, oh, win by 5, win by 3, loss by 38. And
Mhm.
it's like you like if they were having a dominant performance, all right, but it's like these losses aren't as close as you want them, and these wins aren't as far apart as you want them. And they're going. It's kind of the opposite of the um, Bears too, because they're going into a Thunderdome. First game right out of it, 49ers. Then the surprisingly competitive Falcons. Then
Mhm.
Eagles round one, Texans, Commanders. And then they get a little bit of a reprieve with the Giants and Bengals and Panthers. But it's just like you're getting this is your get your shit together week, not your calm down week.
Mhm. Yeah, I genuinely, if you told me they trade for like Tyreek Hill or something, I'd totally believe that.
Yeah, no, it's I guess it's the best way to describe it is this week they're either gonna after they leave this week they're either gonna feast or they're gonna famine. There's
Yeah.
I don't I don't think with this upcoming stretch and how good other teams have been appearing and how bad they've been appearing that they're gonna be able to do things that
Mm.
as well as they want them to or their fans want them to. And it's like, and I know I'm notoriously down on the Eagles for being like a piece of shit team, despite loving them. But
Right.
the Eagles are at this, like the Eagles versus the Cowboys is almost a blood sport for the Eagles.
Right. It really is one of those like you can get away with a lot if you just win. If you just win that game,
Yeah,
like as an Eagles coach,
yeah,
like a lot of things are excused.
yeah, and it's like, and there's just hatred on both sides,
Mm.
and with how people have been running their mouths and stuff, it's like, oh, this might be a blood sport because they also might be, depending on how the Commanders keep going, that might also be helping determine who gets a wild card seed. And
Oh yeah, that's true.
then the next time they play, which I think is going to be more of a blood sport, is Week 17, and that's in Philly in Week 17. So
Right.
somebody might die. If both teams are in contention, I think somebody will lose a life.
Oh god. Certainly in the fan, it'll be a tragedy remembered for years if it's the fans. But
Or celebrated,
um,
depending on which side.
Christ. Um, shall we do our don't sleep on games?
We shall.
I like your pick. That's
I,
actually a sneaky fun one.
that's what I thought too. I was when I was looking at the schedule, trying to determine, all right, who's gonna be an interesting game, who's not at like the main time slot and stuff. But I went with the Seahawks versus the Falcons, a 3-3 and a 4-2 team that are kind of like, I would say, a little bit of sleeper picks for the season.
Mhm.
Like the Falcons are technically tied for first in their division. The Seahawks are tied for first in their division, which is kind of fun. And they're both
Mm.
like, they both have shown like hints of like greatness and hints of like issues. This season, and oh, this is a kind of a fun fact. This season so far, the Falcons have only scored a total of 3 more points than the Seahawks. So they are been playing very close in their scoring
Right.
abilities.
Yes.
So I think
You know, it's funny. Like, I'm so tired of trying to defend Trevor Lawrence. You know who all that energy has gone to? Geno Smith. Because I'm
yes,
like, this guy is balling out, arguably a top 10 quarterback. Like, he's reaching that Matthew Stafford thing where even when they're not winning, I'm like, you guys, you got to look, you have to watch the actual footage, though. He's doing all this complicated shit.
yeah,
He looks so good. The team's letting him down. Like, it's crazy how quickly I pivoted to Geno Smith, secret GOAT.
but yeah, it feels like a sneaky fun game where
Right.
there's not a lot on the line at the moment, but the end of the season with these two teams could be
Mm.
interesting.
Um, I really would like to see if Kirk Cousins is going to throw for 500 yards again. It's got to be this game,
Yes.
and that would actually be incredibly entertaining.
Or hear me out. He throws for 500 against the Vikings in December.
And everyone's brain just breaks.
That would be fun to
No one
watch.
knows anything. Like Roger Goodell commits seppuku. Everyone, like the Canton is set on fire. A meteor hits wherever the Super Bowl is. All hell would break loose.
I believe Vegas.
Vegas. Did you see that nonsense about them talking about potentially having a Super Bowl overseas?
I think that's stupid. I think I wouldn't be
Sure,
against
you
having
won't have it in snowy weather, but you'll go to fucking Germany.
I wouldn't be against having a playoff game in there, like the conference games for the bye week for the Pro Bowl. Hell, I wouldn't even be against having the Pro Bowl there. But I think having the Super Bowl itself there is kind of a waste.
right? The Pro Bowl might actually work to make it more competitive because it's like then you're playing for something. Like set it or put that in South America. That'll get people fired up.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
I think just the loss of revenue for the Super Bowl being played outside of the states for like the NFL as a whole, they have to literally like be making millions of dollars like per head if that was the
Hmm.
case.
Yes. And my don't sleep on game of the week is weirdly enough Vegas. A team
Another
that
fun
seems to be
pick.
put, yeah, a team that seems to kind of be packing it in, or at least like just trying to go young, versus a team that has to decide whether or not they're going to wrap it up. So Vegas, again, when I talk about process, it's Vegas that is emblematic of like bad process. Like, you know, they had an interim coach get them to the playoffs. They don't keep that interim coach in favor of a Patriots guy who doesn't fit in. Then they keep the interim guy, and he's kind of floundering. They had a chance to trade Devontae Adams in the offseason, presumably to the Jets for a first round pick, and they don't do it. And now they're just a hodgepodge of talent, but hopefully bringing back Aiden O'Connell will at least give them a little spark and a little motivation to fight harder. Whereas the Rams are starting off the season very, very rough. You've fully given up on them. I still have faith because they are getting Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup back. But at some point, you lose too many games and it becomes hard to justify keeping them in the game.
I was gonna say I think it depends on when they come back.
Right.
Because if the when is their did they already have their bye week?
Yes, I just had it.
Okay,
Cup is supposed to be back this week.
yeah,
And for me, it's kind of like a do or die of like, if they're going to have like a really dominant game that motivates them to keep fighting for the season, at least try to get a wild card. It'll
yeah,
be around here.
yeah. They need to have a very big turnaround by I would say week 9. If they're not
Hmm.
showing clear signs of life by week 9, I think I think that might be draft pick time.
Yeah.
'Cause
Like this is either the start of an incredible
actually,
comeback or things fall apart here.
actually, that's a lie. They can go to week 11 because I looked at it's like week 9 is Seahawks and then 10 and 11 are Patriots Dolphins, but then it's big teams again. Bills,
Hmm.
49ers, the Jets they like to feed things to Cardinals. I think that stretch is going to
Hmm.
might be the season's death sentence, but I think that's going to be a fun game to watch between the two. They are very equal caliber.
I agree.
All right, with that, another week has ended. Send us,
Yes.
Carter. Send us home.
As the temperature continues to drop, why don't you all grab a nice Oktoberfest beer, a nice cup of hot chocolate, put on your favorite long sleeve shirts, and sit down for 7 hours of autumn football this week. But until then, I'm Carter,
And I'm not wearing a shirt.
and have no fear, week 7 is here.